With so many blockchains that are coming out in this cycle, both layer 1s and layer 2s, it is a little bit difficult to orient yourself and understand what's going on. We are probably overcompensating for the lack of infrastructure that we had in the previous cycle, when all we had was Ethereum with its maximum 30 TPS and almost $100 gas fees, and everybody just like, we need to fix this. And we have a bunch of L1s and L2s that I'm going to go over in this video. And there goes the infamous blockchain trilemma, the speed, decentralization, and security. It's probably a little bit of an outdated term by this point because the blockchain space moves so fast. However, it is a term that I think is still relevant. Each blockchain still compromises on one thing or another. It doesn't mean that one blockchain is bad, it means that it is more suitable for certain applications rather than for others. As for decentralization, this largely depends on what you think decentralization is. Most of the time you can think of it as like the number of validators or the number of people who can participate in consensus, and how likely it is or how easy it is for one party to become so big that they have the majority vote. It is of course pretty easy if the blockchain is small, and the bigger it is, the more difficult it becomes in most of them. However, in my personal opinion, in proof of work blockchains, it is slightly more of a decentralized system because of the ease of accessibility. So in anything that is related to staking your tokens, you gotta understand that you need to get those tokens first. So if you'd like to go and become an Ethereum staker, you gotta go to an exchange and buy ETH there first with your likely dollars. So you need still to be that connection to the banking system. You need some kind of access to different exchanges, and you need quite a bit of money. So it already slashes off some people with proof of work based systems where you don't need to go somewhere and get those tokens first to become a validator, or you don't even need any kind of forms. You just go in, set up your hardware, download the specific software, and you're good to go. You become one of the miners and you become a participant in a chain. However, there's of course a risk if there is some huge number of mining machines per one operator or very huge mining pools, and there are some risks involved too, but in my opinion those are a bit more difficult to centralize than the proof of stake or any kind of staking related or liquidity related chains like BearChain, for example. It uses a consensus called proof of liquidity, and this liquidity also means basically the more money you have, the more likely you are to be a bigger participant in the network. So it all comes back to just the way capitalism works.
Rob the poor to feed the rich. Am I right?
Security ties nicely with decentralization. However, again, it is very wiki-wassy. I don't even know how to say the word, but basically kind of a concept that you cannot define. So in Sui, for example, there are different types of transactions. There are some transactions that go and they don't concern other parties, they just concern your own. So they bypass consensus, and that's kind of the whole thing of blockchains and why they are a bit slower, because there is a consensus mechanism that takes time to like have all the people agree on the thing. And in Sui, there are some transactions that only involve you yourself. They bypass that long process of going out and agreeing with everybody on this thing. That might make it less secure by the definition of security, if you think of like consensus being the main security mechanism in different chains. However, you may just not care about it, and I know many people don't care about it, and they just store everything on a centralized exchange. So here it comes back to what you value. Wow, that was a very heavy accent for that one. But anyways, let's get a bit deeper into each chain. Let's start with Aptos. Aptos is kind of the oldest one. It has already had its TGE some time ago, but it already pumped a bit and pumped a bit more again in this cycle. The overall thing of Aptos is that it was taking the developments that Meta developers and basically Facebook developers had and introduced them into here. So they had previously a lot of work put into it to make it smooth and user-friendly, and it does go very fast with claiming up to 160,000 transactions per second. Then, of course, it's difficult to compare because of the ways they count these transactions, because they may count more things as transactions than actually are. Like it's not just simple sending funds. There can be some internal transactions or contract calls or something like that. And it achieves it through parallel processing. Parallel processing is a very popular kind of umbrella term, and different blockchains do this parallel processing in different, they achieve this in different ways. But I would say kind of everybody almost does it at this moment, so that multiple transactions can go on at once if they are of different types especially. Now let's go to developer tools, and let's mostly relate to the programming language. Aptos uses Move. That's the programming language that the Facebook and Meta developed some time ago. And I'm not a developer myself. However, I heard good reviews about Move and that it is kind of a very easy and understandable language to use. And the next criterion to compare is funding. Aptos is heavily backed by VCs with hundreds of millions to build its ecosystem for its foundation. I'm going to put on the screen all the funds. On one hand, it is great. It shows the conviction of VCs that they think this project is going to go moon. But on the other hand, you have to be very careful when their tokens unlock and they might dump on the market, which they're likely going to do at some point because that's how VCs make money, right? So it just depends, I guess, on what you value more. A bit of the market action, and that's then you would prefer to have more VC funding. Or if you would prefer something more fair or something more internal, I mean, not internal, but like intrinsically crypto-like, then you would prefer less funding. I would say that's kind of the two camps that are out there. But there are some disadvantages of Aptos, and mainly that is its ecosystem. And it is honestly the disadvantage of all of this, like L1s and L2s. They're all very new, and despite their kind of great infrastructure, like being fast, being secure, or being whatever, nobody wants to build on them. And another thing to mention is its decentralization, or the lack of it, to be honest. I am probably biased because I am too heavily opinionated about it, but most proof-of-stake systems, just by the way you have to acquire the tokens somehow through a centralized exchange, very likely, and then go stake them. And then there is also a limited number of people who can do it, and there is also a minimum number you gotta have to become a validator. That just makes it less accessible for a genuine user, which I think is a minus for decentralization. Sui is very similar to Aptos. It's like Aptos is the son of a Move that was being built by Facebook and Meta, and Sui is like the daughter. So it's like the main advantage of it is that the gas fees are so low, and it's so fast, and it's so user-friendly that you stop caring about how decentralized or non-decentralized it is. So decentralization, I would say, it's really not its strongest point, and low latency as very much is. Now, however, despite this low latency, its ecosystem is also not the largest, and I would say, just like for other ones, ecosystem is very small and it's not the brightest. However, we did have some GameFi projects that tried to leverage Sui for its high TPS. Interestingly, they chose Sui to build over Aptos. And we also have some meme coins being built on Sui as well. It's not as big as Solana. I'm not going even to talk about Solana in this video because it's like was launched a long time ago. But in this cycle, it almost feels like Sui is a new Solana. They also have been down already. They really take all the Solana steps to become the Solana of this cycle. But the funding is also pretty good. It's very similar to Aptos. Again, it also has a team of some of the people from Facebook, so they also brought a lot of the funding and kind of VCs being convicted in this. And with the same funding, there comes the same kind of concern of VCs dumping on you when their tokens unlock. So keep an eye on their unlocks if you want to make sure you're kind of basing any strategies that you have on that too. And now let's go to Quai Network. Quai Network is the only proof-of-work blockchain on this list. So if you want something that's proof-of-work, I really recommend you to look into this one. And I would say it's kind of like a Ethereum Classic, but on steroids. So it is a proof-of-work EVM-compatible blockchain, and here we have the kind of the check mark, the advantage of solidity, that developers already have a lot of the resources, and they technically can just take and their Ethereum application and port it to Quai Network. So when a new chain is launching, you really can just go and take a bunch of existing EVM applications and try to build them on Quai and become the first one to launch it there. So it's a lot of opportunities for developers if you would like to come join on a new chain. And for other things, it is also scalable. It claims up to 50,000 transactions per second and more, and it achieves it through sharding. Sharding is a common process. There are some other blockchains that are using it, like Alephium, Shardium. The Ethereum 2.0 originally also wanted to use sharding, but they never ended up using it. Interesting and easy to understand technology to just take one blockchain and shard it into multiple, and you kind of have this parallel execution across multiple blockchains so that you have a very high TPS. So technically it's also parallel transaction processing. As for transaction speed, Quai Network claims up to 50k plus transactions per second, which is lower than Aptos and Sui. However, here it's also the different way you count transactions counts here. And Quai Network prioritizes more on the security aspect and decentralization aspect, because again, it is proof of work and there is a very large number of validators in comparison to Sui. The main selling point of Quai is actually not even its decentralization and proof of work stuff, although it can be for many people. It's energy-based money. So the energy-based money system involves two tokens. One is Quai, which is similar to Bitcoin with a saving model and kind of limited supply. And the other one is Chi. Chi does not have a limited supply and it aims to function as a digital cash, actually. So it's like a stable coin in quotes that is not pegged to fiat. So the way it works, so imagine you are a miner and you mine some Chi. And the more hash you put in, the more Chi you get. It aims to be this kind of a linear relationship with if you put the same number of hash at any point in the network, no matter its difficulty or its popularity, you get the same number of Chi back. So this kind of allows to connect the energy costs that miners have to the price of Chi, and there is this kind of intrinsic value of Chi without being pegged to fiat. It is kind of representing the energy prices, the cheapest probably energy prices all over the world where people are mining. I would like to go deeper into this, but again, this video is not purely about Quai, so let's go over and talk about its disadvantages as well. So complexity, that is kind of the main weak point of Quai. Its concept of energy dollar is a bit difficult to grasp for many people, so some people may not see a value in that unless they understand it. However, if people do understand it, it may be really good. On the other hand, the complexity is internal in there. The structure involves sharding, and it kind of is a 3-layer blockchain. It's not a one, so you can imagine it's like an L1 with L2s and L3s. So the scalability is very much enhanced with that, but it also involves internal complexity to its consensus mechanism. So it uses its own consensus mechanism called POEM. So some people may wonder for the internal complexity, so any kind of core development may be very difficult to do for Quai. However, you don't have to do that. As a developer, again, you are going to use Solidity to develop on Quai, which kind of is a benefit here for the ecosystem. But again, Quai is still pre-launch and its ecosystem is not large. And it's an issue just like for many other projects, that there are not too many dApps that are being built. The last point is funding. Comparatively to Aptos and Sui, Quai Network's funding is lower. That depends whether you value funding and good market action but potential for dumping of VCs, or you value a bit more of a closer to fair, more intrinsic crypto stuff. And we're gonna go to the next chain, that is Monad. Monad is an EVM compatible layer 1 blockchain. It's famous for its big funding and very active Twitter community. They have been in development for a long time, I feel like, as well, just like Quai Network. They've been telling testnet soon, and it's almost like a race to mainnet at this point between these two projects. Anyways, Monad is famous for its familiarity because it's basically Ethereum and it's almost one-to-one to Ethereum development, which is great for developers, and people can use Solidity to develop on it. It's like a more scalable version of Ethereum, so they basically took it and decided to parallelize the transactions of Ethereum. Developer tooling, of course, also stays, so it's a great advantage for people trying to port their applications to Monad, because it's literally the same as Ethereum. Monad is also a proof-of-stake based chain, and all the things I've said about proof-of-stake several times also stand here, so I would say decentralization, it's not its strongest point. However, speed is, and familiarity, I would say, is its main advantage. Again, it is also a pre-launch project. You can only go participate and testnet, potentially earn any kind of airdrops and stuff if you are interested in that. I would recommend you to go check them out. And Monad had a very large funding, which again depends on whether you like it or not. I feel like this video is already getting pretty long, so let's get straight to BearChain. BearChain is just like Monad. It has a very large presence on Twitter. It has a very large funding too. So they've been in development for some time, and all they're famous for right now is large parties and side events. However, they're pretty good on Twitter, so that's good. They also have some Bear's NFTs and different kinds of NFTs that are built on Ethereum, interestingly enough. And they also have their own consensus mechanism. That's like the kind of a point of differentiation for them. It's called proof of liquidity. On the one hand, it's interesting that they're trying something new. On the other hand, it's very much untested. There is another similarity of BearChain to Monad in how it operates. It's basically an identical EVM type L1 to Ethereum, so any kind of porting to applications for developer tooling is very easy. And again, decentralization I already mentioned as kind of a potential, not the strongest point. It's actually very interesting to notice how there are like two projects with very large funding, Aptos and Sui, and there are two other projects that are also very similar with also very large funding, that's Monad and BearChain. I don't know, but
I suspect foul play.
And now let's finally go to the layer 2 solutions that I mentioned in the beginning of this video. So layer 2s are like the different paradigm you can go and scale the whole crypto Web3 space. So you can either go and build a bunch of L1s and have either layer 0 or a bunch of other type of bridges, connect them for different purposes, or you can kind of try to put all the L2s into Ethereum and try to build this vibrant Ethereum ecosystem. Many layer 2s share the same disadvantages and advantages. The main advantage being that it is all in the Ethereum ecosystem. It is one of the most vibrant ecosystems right now, because that's the oldest and it has the most developers and it has the first mover advantage. This makes it easier for developers to port Ethereum applications straight to L2s. However, there is a varying degree of difficulty to building on different L2s, because even though they're all Solidity compatible, there may be different tweaks that are required to build on different ones. The other side of this coin is that there is a very large fragmentation involved between all layer 2s. Even though they all might have different unique selling points and specialized functions, developers may not just go and build on it if there is not enough liquidity on those L2s. They might have to go and build on Arbitrum and Optimism again, because most users are there. So if there is just another L2, which may be perfect for some certain applications, because there are just very few users, because nobody uses it, developers might be forced to not go there and build on the very more kind of adopted ones. So every new L2 might face the issue of adoption in the very beginning. I'll just mention a couple of L2s in this video, so let's start with MegaETH, for example. It received over 120 million in funding, I think even more, maybe over several rounds. It claims over 100,000 transactions per second, which places it similar to like Sui. I would imagine it's like Sui or Aptos, but as an L2 kind of, even though it's like there is nothing that connects them. They literally have different programming languages, but that's kind of how I perceive it in a way. Anyways, MegaETH attracted investors and a lot of attention because of its kind of a different model and different approach to building an L2, because we've had a bunch of rollups, a bunch of ZK and optimistic type of rollups, and they're just doing something slightly differently. Most L2s claim in their docs that they inherit the security of Ethereum. However, it is a main discussion point, and it's a common concern that people raise in the cryptosphere, that L2s are less decentralized than L1s, because of their extra nodes and fewer nodes that they need to set up to make sure they're as scalable as they are. L2 architectures usually just involve a sequencer, and in many cases the sequencer is the centralization point for them. MegaETH, for example, does not even say that they're going to decentralize it. Most L2s have it centralized, but they say they will have in the plans sometime in the future to decentralize it. MegaETH just goes straight and says it's a centralized sequencer, it's a very powerful computer, but again, it's one of the centralization risks in my point. And the centralization risk is not even just in terms of like, oh, it's not crypto-like, it's just in terms of like maintenance. If there is just one computer or one big network of computers, the larger it is, the more computers there are, the more robust it's going to be. Another L2 that's worth mentioning is Base, that's built by Coinbase. This already raises the same concerns about centralization. It's known to be one of the more centralized L2s out there. However, many people don't care, and it has a pretty good ecosystem, so you may want to have a look into Base. Just like many other L2s and many other applications all over, they said they were not going to have a token, but well, what do many blockchain projects do when they launch without a token? Well, they have a token like 6 months or 1 year in. So we'll see when TGE for Base happens. The last but by no means the least interesting project on L2 on the list is Movement. Movement is built by Movement Labs. They have quite a bit of funding, and this kind of a modular solution is also a novel architecture that is being introduced. So this L2 supports Aptos move language, Sui move language, and it also has an EVM interpreter, so you can come and build with whatever language you would like. This may be an interesting solution if you'd like a Sui-like or Aptos-like experience on top of Ethereum and with interactions with the Ethereum ecosystem. The risks and the disadvantages stay very similar to many other L2s in the fact that the liquidity fragmented all over the place, all over different L2s, and developers may choose to develop on more well-established L2s over this one because it's a new and unproven model. And the other thing to look a bit deeper into once Movement has their testnet is how well do the system actually work together, since Move and Solidity were not meant to work together in the first place. So we can have this kind of Swiss knife effect. It can do many things, but it doesn't do anything really well. And you might want to go with something specific. If you want to build on Move, you go and build on Sui or Aptos, and if you want to build EVM, you just build on something very popular EVM based. So it may be kind of a weak point here, but it will depend on how well they convince the developers the usability and the usefulness of this of the two coming together. Every project in this video that I mentioned has a different selling point, and there are different reasons to keep them on your radar. And at this point in the crypto space, what we're doing, I feel like, is just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. It may work. And we'll see what works, honestly. Let's keep an eye on these ones. No financial advice, but let's see what happens. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comments, and see you in the next one.